I want to tell you a story about a young lady who had a Russian name and her name was Tatiana. And she was a single mom, and it was actually the crisis of having to raise that child in this world of sin and difficulty that eventually led her to Christ. And she tells a story about being in her bedroom in this little town called Hamilton, Montana, and she was there all alone, and she just fell on her knees and said, and she'd been going to this church, and she just got scared about life, and she said, I just gave my life over to Christ. But that didn't make her life any more fulfilled, and she was just lonely, and she was looking for a husband. She was 30 years old, had lived a rather wild life, if you might say, and she finally came to the day where she just gave even the idea of marriage over to Christ. And then I'll tell you about another person, and his name was Kevin. He lived in the same sort of community, and he buried his first wife of 20 years, and it was tough. It was tough. I can remember walking around our pond many a times grieving during those days. And one time I was walking around the pond and I was praying, and I said, God, if you do bring me a wife, bring me music, because Corey and I are just absolutely, we're not musical, and I'd just like to see that. Now, why I prayed that, I can't tell you. Well, I can now, but I couldn't at the time. It was just so out of character. And months later, I was praying again, and I was around that pond, and I was thinking, oh, wait, I'm the pastor of the Lone Rock Bible Church. I'm the founding pastor there. Where do you find a woman at age 40? You know? And I realized the place where you meet single women is where? The bar. You know, that's where everybody goes. And I didn't think that was quite appropriate. But so I was thinking about that, and just got impressed upon my heart that one day she'll just walk in to church. And we're meeting in the Lone Rock School at the time. So, for the next 6 months, every time a single woman would walk in, who's that? You know? And then I'm looking down, oh, she's got a ring. Okay, so that's not her. One day, this woman walked in, and I said, now, who is that? Who is that? And I remember afterwards trying to talk to her because she had a raincoat, the exact same raincoat as I had. And I tried to talk to her. I said, hey, I got a raincoat just like that. And she just got all embarrassed and ran out the room. And so, and by the way, her name was Tatiana. And it's pretty cool. You know how she got that name, Tatiana? By the way, her sister, Susie, Cindy, and David, and then there's Tatiana. How do you get that name? Well, her father was learning opera in Germany, and she was named after a role or a character in the opera, and the opera was Tatiana. And I remember thinking, wow, this girl is really quite interesting and captivating. And the next week she came back to church, and we were having baptism, and somebody came up to me afterwards. We finished all the baptism and said, hey, that girl Tati, she wants to get baptized. So I went up to her and talked to her, and I baptized her that day. I didn't know I was baptizing my bride, my future bride. But, we were in a Bible study together, a singles group. It was kind of part of the Lolo Community Church. And I remember one day we were at her house, and she was kind of talking about, her loneliness and how she's looking. She really wants to have somebody to walk through this life with her. And I, in the midst of all these other couples, people all really thinking the same thing, we'd like to have somebody to walk through life together with. I comforted her by saying, well, maybe God would give that gift to you. Now, she probably heard that, but she didn't, maybe she even heard I was quietly volunteering. Okay? I was quietly volunteering. And maybe she heard that too, because maybe she got a little indication that, maybe this guy would be interested in me. I mean, he's a pastor. I mean, who am I? He's a veterinarian pastor, prominent in the community. I'm just a single mom. But she had my eye, and she walked into church. And I remember a few months later, I dropped my boys off at her house, and I went somewhere, and I came back, and she had them all sitting around the fireplace with an instrument. And she was kind of showing them how to play instruments. And that's when I remembered that prayer I'd made 8 months earlier, and we were engaged at that time. That's where she put in my ring the inscription from Ruth and says, "Where you go, I shall go." Well, remember the story of Ruth. And I tell you that because there's some parallel there. There was inside my heart to bless this girl, and I saw that God was just putting her on my heart, and she was the same way. She tells the story, by the way, that after the first Sunday, she took Coleman, her son, her single mom son, and put him up on the counter and says, "I think I met the man we're going to marry." And it was a plural, "we're going to marry." Now, very interesting story. Well, as we look to this story of Ruth, it's often called a love story. And it is in a lot of ways, but that's really not the main theme. The main theme of this is the redemption of Naomi. So Naomi is actually the main character, or the protagonist, so to speak, and Ruth is one of the supporting actresses, if you will. Yet she plays a prominent role throughout of this. And remember, the story begins in chapter 1, in the days when the judges ruled. Now, by now, maybe you've got some idea what that implies. But it means in the days when the judges ruled, that was, the nation was under the Deuteronomy covenant. That if the nation of Israel does right and follows God's law, the nation will be blessed. But if they do not follow God's law, they will be under great curses, and one of those is a famine. And guess what the next line is? And there was a famine in the land. Most people miss all of that. Well, what does it tell us immediately? The nation is straying. Deuteronomy chapter 30 tells us what they're to do if they find themselves in that situation. Repent. Rip their clothes, if you will. Put ashes on your head. Oh, God, forgive us for our sin, and then He'll bless. A man by the name Elimelech. Eli means God. Melech is king. God is king. Elimelech ran from God. He had enough of this famine stuff, and he was out of there and went to the sworn enemy of God, to the land of Moloch, the god of the Moabites. And he put his family under the god of the Moabites. How do you think that worked out? And this story then next says, and Elimelech died. You know, Naomi didn't die. Elimelech did. Who was responsible for the family? Men. Who was responsible for the family? Who paid the price? Now, after he died, the sons marry Moabite women, forbidden under the Jewish law. Not as bad as, say, marrying the people who were native of the land, because these are relatives, but just the same, it was a forbidden marriage. And guess what? They didn't go back to Israel, by the way. They married Moabite women. And they died. And now Naomi is left. And that is where we are. And she's seeing God is stripping everything away. She's seeing God as capricious. You remember the word capricious? It comes from the word caprine. Remember equine is horses, canines dogs, felines cats, caprine are goats. Goat-like, just butting her around. She didn't see the reality was her own fault. Isn't that true when we sin? We blame God, we blame other people, we don't even see our part in it. If you were in Sunday school today, you start to get a better idea of that. It's a story returning, though. Suddenly, she'd heard in the fields of Moab, where they're just starving, trying to get by, she heard that there was a blessing in Israel. What had happened? They repented, didn't they? So she decides to return. Return to the God of her fathers. It's a story of commitment. Pagan girl, one daughter-in-law of Ruth, who dedicated her life to the destitute woman. and placed herself under the protection of Yahweh, the God of Israel. It's a story of bitterness. Naomi is deeply bitter. She even tries to send Ruth back because why should you have to be under Yahweh, the God of Israel? Go back to God of Moloch and go back to the Moab gods. Go back to them. They don't beat up on you like this one does. He calls you to account. But Ruth put herself under underneath the shadow of Yahweh, the God of Israel. And this is also a story, as we're going to start to see today and find next week. It's a story of vindication. Because God's name is being torn apart by Naomi. Why call me Naomi, which means pleasant, when she returns to Jerusalem? Or maybe not to Jerusalem, to Bethlehem. She returns to Bethlehem. People say, is this not Naomi? Is this not pleasant? Don't call me pleasant. Call me Mara. Bitterness. Call me bitterness because Yahweh has taken everything from me. Don't pay attention to that girl over here. She's just a pagan girl. Ruth, who turns out to be the greatest blessing. Chapter 2 begins, though, with the harvest. And hope starts to be restored. And it's a story of providence. Remember, Ruth, you notice how Naomi protected Ruth. When Ruth said, hey, I should go out and glean in the fields. A dangerous time, the time of Judges. There's no police force. And if you're a foreigner, the only people who are going to help you is your foreign people. So you are totally vulnerable. A single woman wandering out in the fields of agriculture among the farm workers. Naomi says, make sure you go to a safe field. No, she says nothing. Go. Doesn't even give her any help. Ruth goes out into the fields. As she looks out among all the fields, and when you're up in Bethlehem, you can look out among all the fields from up there. It's a high ridge looking down on the fields. You could just see her eyes scanning. And for some reason, she chose this field. Some reason, we call that providence. God's Spirit working behind the scenes, making her just kind of, I think I'll go there. Maybe, have you ever had that times where you just feel like, I think I better go this way, not that way? I remember one time walking in Chicago, and I suddenly realized I'm not in the best place, am I? And I felt like, oh, crud, how did I on the weekends, sometimes I was there, I just wander, take the train and wander, and I ended up right in Caprini Green, the most notorious, dangerous place. And I could feel it, suddenly felt it, and went, oh, I'm in trouble. And I turned around, there's a cop car watching me. He was parked there. That was Providence. I walked right on through. I walked fast, got on the train, got out of there. Providence, God's working behind the scenes to protect us. It's also a story of redemption. And we're going to see that Boaz takes concern for Ruth. And he places a blessing upon her when he sees her. Now you remember the story when Ruth sees him pointing to her, asking him, who is that girl? Asking his workers, who is that girl? And then he comes walking over to her. She's alone. She doesn't know his intentions. And you can just imagine how she's feeling like, uh-oh. He comes storming over to her and he blesses her. He actually says, may God, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to dwell, may he protect you. He puts a blessing on it. We realize Boaz is a man of blessings. And it is that protection that we see. And it's a humble story. Ruth falls on her face before Boaz. And she says, why have I found favor from you? I'm a foreigner. What? Why are you not abusing me? Why are you protecting me? She's humble, she's scared, and she's protected by the God of Israel, whom under the wings she has come. It's also a story of character of Ruth. She is known through the whole city to be a woman of great character, probably of higher character than most of the members of the community. She pledged her life to an old widow and the widow's God. And she's going to a place where she has no family except the old widow. And this will be a story of a changed heart as well, as Naomi begins to see the amount of grain that Ruth gleans in one day and realizes this is too much. She declares this blessing in Ruth chapter 2. Let's see where we're at. Okay, I went through all that. And her mother-in-law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? How did you get this much?" And then she even exclaimed, "Blessed be the man who took notice of you. This is too much. Somebody's helping you." Then Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one at whose place she had been working. "The name of the man I work today is Boaz." And she said, "Yahweh bless him." Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, let's see, is that here? Bless him, okay. And Naomi said to his daughter-in-law, "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead." She has added, "This man is a close relative. He's one of our kinsman redeemers." Kinsman redeemers. Now it's interesting what happened here in this sentence. This is a change in Naomi's talk. Remember, Naomi's character is one of blessing, but the hardships of life have made her a woman of bitterness. But now as God is starting to bless her, she's beginning to see that when people return to the one true God, that is only when real blessings are found. When one who's been running, even return bitter, but does return to the one true God, that is where real blessings exist. Question is, any of you wandered from God? Well, I have a time or two. And there are times in our life where we wake up and say, "What have I been doing?" And realize, maybe it is even by providence you're here today. God just kind of turned your car and you pulled in, or whatever happened. All right, I will go this time. Maybe it's now here today that you're going to realize that by returning to the one true God, that is where the harvest season begins. That's where blessings occur. Well, Ruth remained in the fields of Boaz for the rest of the harvest season. And one is left to wonder, though, all right, they're going to get the gleanings, but will this be enough for them to survive? And then even, how will they live for the long term? Because in those days, to be a widow is very dangerous. Starvation is very real. And to be two widows, it is extremely dangerous. Chapter 2 ends with this remark. And she lived with her mother-in-law. And that's an important statement. It says here, she is living up to her vow for sure, that much. And it almost implies that she's not out wandering the streets and playing games. It almost implies that she's living up to her dedication to her mother-in-law and taking care of it. Taking care of her. Chapter 2 ends and chapter 3 begins. How many ever saw the movie Fiddler on the Roof? Put your hands up. How many? Yeah. Do you remember the song? Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. Find me a find. That's chapter 3. Chapter 3 of Ruth. Ruth chapter 3. One day, Naomi, and by the way, how'd I do for singing? Huh? Not bad? Not bad. Yeah. I do have my bass, so I had to bring it down a couple octaves. But there we go. One day, Naomi said to her mother, one day Naomi, her mother-in-law said to her, "My daughter, should I not try to find a home for you where you will be provided for?" What's she saying? I'm going to match you up, girl. I'm going to try and match you up. Is not Boaz, with whose servant girls you have been, a kinsman of ours? Tonight, he'll be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. He's going to be out there with the guys. Wash and perfume yourself and put on your best clothes. Okay, now, stop there. I'm going to try and get you a guy. But you're going to have to do the enticements, girl. So clean up and put on the perfume and put on all the enticements and put on your best clothes. And I'm going to send you out among the wolves and hope they don't tear you up. Kind of what's really happening here. I mean, she's sending her to the threshing floor. Let's see what I have there next. Go to the threshing floor. Now, what was the threshing floor? We talked about it. That's a smooth rock surface, stone surface, that they would throw the barley up in where the winds are really, afternoon winds, it's a high ridge. The afternoon winds are almost guaranteed to be there. They'll throw the barley up and the light husks will blow away. That's the chaff. And then the heavy barley will come down, and that's how they separated out and got pure barley. All right, so they would bring in their whole harvest, and all the rancher and all of his crew would be there. And they would have this time, they'd work their whole season. Now they're throwing the barley up, and there's bushels and bushels of barley. And it was now the ranch owners or farm owners' job to put on the party and celebration for the guys. This is a guy's night out, okay? And, being a veterinarian, I think I've told you this before, I'd go to one ranch, and the animals and the ranch hands are treated one way. You go to another ranch that is a believer's ranch, a Christian ranch, where God's Spirit has been working on the heart of that ranch owner, and the way they treat the animals and the way he treats his hired hands are dramatically different. It's really quite obvious. Well, the threshing floor has different ranches. And some of those ranches are pretty wild. Pretty wild. And like the old Wild West days, on the wild places where the gold is being brought in, guess who comes? The ladies of the night. And the threshing floor was a notorious place for the ladies of the night. The wine would flow, they'd have a meal, and things would happen at the threshing floor. Now Boaz was a man of different character. And he was there on the threshing floor, and it was his night. What does mother-in-law tell her to do? Take a bath. Put on good clothes, put on the perfume, go down to the threshing floor by yourself. Wow. Wow. Really? Okay. Okay, well, maybe she thinks this is a good thing to do, even though that is a notorious place. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. Now, they did drink a lot. They often drank a lot at these. This is a big celebration. This is like a wedding kind of thing. It's a big celebration. And so he probably was, and we'll find out he was a little merry at the time. Go down to the threshing floor, and when he has finished eating and drinking, when he lies down, note the place where he's lying. So there's all the different hands over here and some over there, and there's Boaz. Note the place where he is lying. Then go, what is she to do? Uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. I will do whatever you say, Ruth answered. This lady really helps protect this girl, doesn't she? I mean, talk about putting her in a vulnerable spot. What is going to happen? Can you imagine Ruth knowing she's in a foreign land? She doesn't know the customs, but I'm sure she knows threshing floors. She knows drinking. She knows, whoa, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So she went to the threshing floor and did as her mother-in-law had commanded her. So she's out there. Can you see this? There's the threshing floor. Probably there's some place where she could kind of keep herself, out of sight. She could watch over to the threshing floor. And she's watching the whole activity on until the sun is maybe even starting to set. And she sees where Boaz lays down. Now, why do they lay down there? Because it's too late to move all that grain tonight, and it's also tradition. Then all the men surround the floor so nobody can steal their grain through the night. So they sleep there. And so she watches this and sees where he had lied down. So she went to the threshing floor, did as her mother-in-law had commanded. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk and his heart was merry. Okay, do I need to say more? He had a lot of wine. All right? And he went to lie down at the end of the grain heap. And she came softly and uncovered his feet and laid down. Ladies, you feel comfortable? You feel vulnerable? Do you think she slept at all? I mean, and Boaz is sleeping fine. Okay, he's fine. She's doing what her mother-in-law said. And what is she really doing? What's her face? She's trusting that Boaz is going to be a man of integrity. So she's really putting herself vulnerable. She's ordered to do so. And listen, if this goes bad, it's only going to go bad for Ruth. Because her name's going to be mud among the community. And she's the foreigner. It's just going to be rough. Naomi has nothing to lose. Because after all, that's the foreigner. That's that foreign, Moabite woman. So ladies, you're Ruth. You're lying under that. How much sleep did you get that night? And then it said that when he'll tell you what to do, well, I'm wondering what she's thinking. I'm sure she's already thought of what she's going to say when she gets discovered. There's the threshing floor. He's on that corner of that threshing floor. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. What do you think that was? He's rolling around and his feet hit something. And he feels maybe even breathing. And he discovered the woman lying at his feet and said, "Who are you?" Now, gentlemen, ladies, let's leave you out of the picture. Gentlemen, you're lying there. You're a single man, all right? You can go back to those days a little bit. You're lying there, and you're at a camp out, if you will. And you've had everybody's asleep, and you hit something, and you find out there's a person down there, and you're going to say, "Who are you?" What are you going to do? What? What? I think this is kind of tamed down for us. What are you doing? And you are a man known in the community. And all your group member are here. And you got a woman at your feet. None of the other guys have a lady at your feet. You find a woman at your feet. What are you going to do? Who are you? What are you doing here? Now, he probably thought maybe it was a prostitute. Came to the wrong place, because this is Boaz's group. Came the wrong day. "I am your servant," Ruth said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman redeemer." Lot in that statement. Number one, I'm your servant, Ruth. I'm humbly coming before you. Then she says, "Spread your corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman redeemer." Now, we don't know what that means. But remember, this is the time when the judges rule. And in Deuteronomy, there's all sorts of other laws, and one of those has to do with the kinsman redeemer. Because you see, there isn't a police force. There aren't SNAP cards to go down and get some food for people who are destitute. So God set up a system called the kinsman redeemer. And it has within the kinsman redeemer idea, and this is where a relative steps in for his relative's family and the relative if he's alive and provides for them if they're in a destitute situation. And it is expected of you to do that. There isn't any government hands out. There's nothing. The only way they're going to survive is if their family steps in, and the family's required to do that under the Deuteronomy law. It's good. But here's where it happens worse, is if the husband dies, then the kinsman redeemer is required to marry that woman, if he's single, marry that woman and raise up a child for the name of that family, the man who died, so the land will be passed on through his family and his name will not be snuffed out. The one who died didn't have any children, had no sons. So what Ruth is saying here is, I want you to be my redeemer. Really, Naomi, I'm not related to you. Naomi is. I want you to protect Naomi and be her redeemer. And how you're going to do that is you're going to spread your garment over me. You're going to cover me under the wings of your garment. Do you see what Ruth did? She turned the story from back when Boaz first met her. And Boaz says, you've come under the wings of Yahweh, the God of Israel. Now she's saying, Boaz, spread your garment over me. You be Yahweh's instrument for our redemption. She's saying, Boaz, marry me for Naomi's sake. For Naomi's sake. Boaz responds, the Lord bless you, my daughter. This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after younger men, whether rich or poor. You know, Boaz apparently is quite wealthy, but he's also probably middle-aged, unmarried. Now, why isn't he married? We're not told. But he may not have been the most handsome guy in the world. Or he's just more of a quiet person, or never found the right woman. Whatever the case may be, is Boaz realizes that by agreeing to what Naomi has set before Ruth, Ruth is primarily looking out for Naomi. And Ruth is of such a character, she's really a catch. Apparently, Ruth is quite a looker. Because everybody knows she could go after younger men and she'd get them. And she didn't. And she could find richer men, but she didn't. She went after somebody who was a kinsman redeemer for Naomi's sake. The Levirate marriage idea is in Deuteronomy chapter 25. Remember, they're under Deuteronomy. That's their covenant. We see the Levirate marriage. The Sadducees went after Jesus, and they were trying to trick him. Do you remember that story? And they said to Jesus, now, there were 7 brothers, and the first one marries and didn't have any children, and he dies. So the second one marries. You remember the story? And all 7 of them married. That's the Levirate marriage in action. Okay? Now, the purpose of that story was for the Sadducees to say there's no resurrection from the dead. I mean, whose wife is she going to be in heaven? And Jesus blows it away and says, first off, you don't know the power of God, and you don't even know the Scriptures. You're the leaders, and you don't know the power of God, you don't know the Scriptures. In heaven, there's no giving to marriage. We're all going to be together. There's no marriage in heaven. So that's the Levirate marriage. In the case of Naomi, then, her family needed redemption. And this is the role that Ruth is asking of Boaz. Redeem the household of Elimelech. And thus she's actually asking to protect Naomi. So that leaves us with the question. Is Ruth in love with Boaz? Does Boaz love Ruth? Well, we're not actually told, but are we given clues? Do you remember how she's responded when she first met him? Why are you treating me like this? You remember how he responded? Over the top, man. he brought her in, gave her food, gave her extra, told the guys, don't touch her, you protect her. He really went over the top. I suspect so. I suspect they did. I think Ruth fell in love with Boaz's character. You see, it's when a woman is most vulnerable that the looks of the husband isn't nearly as important as his character. In fact, in the longevity of the marriage, it's the character of the husband that really becomes the most important thing to the wife. Because that character will come throughout their whole life and will change how their family dynamics are. In Boaz's first encounter with Ruth, number one, he's been apparently looking forward to meeting this Ruth because he's heard about her. Number two, he goes and blesses her to be under the wings of Yahweh. And then Ruth, in response, says, I want you to be the one who you talked about blessing. I want you to be God's servant. I think that was a poetic response, and that gives us indication. I think they both fell in love, even at first meeting. I remember when I first saw Toddy at the Lone Rock School when we were doing service. I went, whoa, who is that? She takes Coleman home, puts him up on the counter and says, I met the man we're going to marry. Yeah, those things do happen. I think that's what happened here. And now Boaz responds, now, my daughter, don't be afraid. Now, stop there. Yeah, she was afraid. She didn't know. She'd been seeing how Boaz was. But you see how his character came through? His character came through and he says, don't be afraid. He recognized that she had good reason to be scared there. Naomi set her up. It was only Boaz's character that saves her in this situation. I will do for you all you ask. I will marry you. And all my fellow townsmen know that you are a woman of noble character. You are a catch, Ruth. We all know it. You are somebody special. Yes, I will marry you. And we all go, yay! Great story. That was good. Let's go home. Although it is true, I'm of near kin. There is a kinsman redeemer nearer than I. Well, it's a great thought. I would do it in a second. But truth is, somebody else has first shot at you, Ruth. I don't. Stay here the night, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem, good. How would you like to hear that, Ruth? Somebody else, well, if he wants you, this guy's a little bit of a... But if he wants to, he has first right. That's the way it is. Sorry, that's good. Let him redeem. That probably was music to her ears. But if he's not willing, as surely as Yahweh lives, I will do it. Lie here till morning. Why, you think that was a quiet night's sleep? I bet that girl was a wreck by morning. First she had to worry about what he's going to say, and then he says, yes, I'll marry you, but somebody gets first shot at you. Oh, no. And that is where our story ends. Wow. Wow. You can't read chapter 4. Just leave it alone. Leave it alone. Have to wait until next week. Now, as the world turns, we got to wait until next week. You know, the old soap operas. Boaz hardly agrees, but there is another who is closer. If he wants to redeem, let him redeem. I hate those words. It's kind of like he has to say it, but, you know, if he wants it, I can't do a thing about it. Wow. Well, let's end with some lessons, though. When a person puts themselves under the wings of Yahweh, the God of Israel, that's when the blessings occur. And sometimes it doesn't work out as you expect, or there are twists in the story that you didn't see coming. But that is what comes in this life, this fallen world. But it is when you put yourselves under his control, like this young girl named Tatiana, my wife of almost 30 years this year, that was when her fulfillment came. And you know, is that when I waited for the girl to walk into church rather than going out? And I'm not making us to be somebody special, but we did fulfill just like this little story here. It does fit in. When we do that, things are better. Tatiana was struggling whether she should go out with other guys, and she just waited. She just waited. It was one of those difficult things. She laid down her marriage just like Ruth did. She laid down her marriage and put her trust into God. Part 2, most importantly, people who claim to be under the wings of Yahweh, people who today say they are believers in Christ, I ask you one question. Do your actions live up to what you claim? You know, this whole storyline here is dependent upon the character of one particular man, and that's Boaz. Naomi sets Ruth up twice for failure. And in both cases, it's the character of a man named Boaz that saves her. You know, that night, all the guys are asleep. He has a woman all to himself. How are you going to react, gentlemen? You're not married even, so you have no bonds there. His character came through. And his character came through so much that he protects her And in fact, God used that and knew that and sent Ruth to him to be her protector all the way through, even before they were married. And our God is also, another part of this, is our God is loving and forgiving. Remember, Naomi, she ran from God. And rather than repenting, she was almost forced to come back after 10 years. And she's so bitter, it is finally, though, that she starts to see that, wow, when I come back, things are so much better. See, God brought great trials upon Naomi. She was right in perceiving that. But the purpose was for her greatest blessings. She did not deserve it, but God sent her a man of great character, the kinsman redeemer, who will redeem her from the mistakes of their rebellion and their rebellion against really the God of the universe. See, today is a story that reflects the cross of Christ. It's a picture of redemption. Redemption of people who don't deserve redemption. Naomi didn't deserve it, but God gave it. All she had to do was turn around, walk back. First step in redemption for Naomi was when she decided to return. Let's close in prayer. Lord God, thank you for this great story of antiquity. One of the most beautiful stories told, with its little twists and turns and destitution to great blessings. Lord, that's a picture of a life of a destitute person running from God, finally coming back. Lord, that's in today's world, that means we kneel at the cross and say, God, forgive me of my sins. Restore me. Maybe it's returning to the God who you've been running from a little bit because your sin has taken over. That's where true blessings are found, when you turn around and say, God, forgive me. Help me get over this sin yuck in my life. Bring me greater redemption today. Bring me that full forgiveness, full restoration that's missing as I've been sinning so grievously against you, even though I believe. Father, it's such a great story. It's so real life. So real to us today. Thank you for your Son. Thank you for the cross. In Jesus' name.